So next up, we've got a regulatory compliance panel. Come on up. Chrissy Hill, acting COO and CLO of Parity Technologies, which is the company affiliated with Polkadot. And we've got Michelle Neitz, who comes from, I'll let her explain her newly branded affiliation with SF and USF. Graham Dixon, CoinShares. And we've got Dr. Shaz Khosru, and he will be the moderator he's our Chief and General Counsel from Algorand Foundation. And so I will let Dr. Saj take it away, but having been through 3 or 4 token sales myself, I'm sure that will be an interesting part of the conversation, MiCA, GDPR, and a lot of other really interesting acronyms. So take it away.
Thank you. All right. So when I was asked to moderate this session, I was actually quite impressed by the wealth of experience of our panelists across many fields. I think one of the most interesting things about being a lawyer in the crypto space is just the breadth of issues you come across, all the way from topics around blockchain and democracy, blockchain for social good, as we've seen panelists talk about yesterday, so big blue sky thinking issues, all the way down to really granular topics around GDPR and privacy on data posted to the blockchain. How is that dealt with in the current environment? How may that need to change to accommodate for blockchain? And also, as we know, big election year around the world, a lot of new regulations may be coming in, what that may mean for the industry. So I think we're quite privileged to have a group of speakers on stage today that can speak to all of those issues. And with that, I'd like to start having them introduce themselves so you can get a flavor of what they've done and what type of issues they've covered. So maybe afterwards you could grab them and pick their brains on some of the most novel issues in the legal space happening across the technology space. So with that, over to you.
Thank you. Oh, can you hear me? Thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Chrissy Hill, and I am the Chief Legal Officer and Interim Chief Operating Officer for Parity Technologies, which is the leading technical contributor to Polkadot, so from a different protocol. And my background in legal and compliance has taken me to a number of interesting places and to work with a number of interesting people. I like to say I've worked with 4 great British names: Linklater's the law firm, Barclays the investment bank, the former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and now Dr. Gavin Wood. And it's been an interesting discovery of the frontier of law and regulation to be involved in the Web3 space, but that's what I wanted. So I would say be careful what you wish for sometimes, because it is a breakneck pace. But I hope through this panel I get to provide you as potential founders in the audience with some practical tips about how to navigate the choppy waters that we see in the legal regulatory space in Web3.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here today. I have been a law professor since 2006 in San Francisco. I'm now at the University of San Francisco School of Law. I spent many years teaching the same laws over and over, and I got really excited about getting into a space where the laws have not even been written yet. Yes, be careful what you wish for, right? But I also started a center now called the Center for Law, Tech, and Social Good. We were originally the Blockchain Law for Social Good Center. And the reason I started the center is because I worked with the California legislature on creating opportunities for blockchain in California. And there's a real educational gap between what lawmakers should know and what they do know. And so as an academic, I started a center that trains government officials. So we've trained state agencies, we've trained attorneys general from around the country on what is blockchain technology, how can it be used, and really trying to give them a long narrative, a bigger narrative than just what they're reading in the headlines. And I'll talk about the election, too, if folks want to hear about it, even though we don't need to talk about the election at all. It's fine with me.
All right.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Graham Dixon. I am the General Counsel at CoinShares. CoinShares is Europe's largest digital asset manager. We carry a range of products, about 19 products across Europe, including, very proudly, an exchange tradable product that is backed by Algorand tokens and allows people to participate in the Algorand story and also in the staking. And I've been in the crypto space for about 5 years. We are very much, to Chrissy's point, and I'm happy to meet people after this, we are very much at the other end of the journey. We are more of a traditional finance firm. We are heavily regulated across multiple jurisdictions, both in the US, across Europe. We're a public company listed in Sweden. But because we deal in crypto assets, we have obviously felt the full force of a number of different regulators and had to deal with those inquiries. And so for those of you who are founders, who are at the start of the growth story, very happy to sort of talk to you about what it might look like at the other end of the spectrum and give you some of that perspective as well.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So, Chrissy, to start with you, a lot of the founders here ask me, how can I stay out of jail? What should I be doing? What are, and also because they don't come from legal backgrounds, we lawyers are big, scary people to them. Graham gave me a lawyer joke before coming on stage, which was, what do you call 4 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? You call it a good start. Yeah. So obviously, we lawyers aren't the easiest or most approachable or most accessible people for a lot of early stage founders. So what would you say would be a healthy diet for them to consider when they're setting up their business?
So I may have heard that joke once or twice before. I would say invest in a healthy legal and regulatory plan for your business. And that is a multi-pronged plan, actually. And if you think about it like a healthy eating plan for your body, right? Your height, your weight, your job, all of these personal characteristics will actually influence your eating plan, right? And it's the same thing for starting a business, like what you focus on building, what jurisdiction you're in, how you want to hire people, how you want to run your business. All of those things will impact the plan that you put in place and how much money you need to spend on it, right? So I always, much like you have the 5 food groups, if you think of a healthy legal and regulatory plan having 5 components, they are structural, regulatory, staffing, intellectual property, and then finally, data. And this is particular to the Web3 space. So under structural, to give you an example, ask yourself the question, to DAO or not to DAO, right? I think that's a great starting point. And have an answer on that. Under regulatory, are you going to be dealing with real-world assets and therefore need to be concerned about being a collective investment scheme, for instance? That can come up, especially related to property. Under staffing, are you going to have digital nomads or are you going to have a physical presence in a particular jurisdiction? Do you want to go with an employer of record or do you want to be an employer yourself? Under intellectual property, the age-old Web3 question of copyleft or copyright. So what's going to be your stance on that, and how are you going to manage your technology in order to be best placed to build? And then finally, under data, privacy. It's with GDPR, impacting technically the whole world, really. And also various views from a cultural perspective, whether you're in the global north or global south, on the right to privacy, what that means to you, again, what jurisdiction you're based in, who you're building for. All of these things will come together in order to equip you to navigate these choppy regulatory waters. And obviously then from a founder's perspective, what you want is certainty. And I think this is a great segue into the US because, other jurisdictions around the world, and I'm not picking on the US because obviously the UK is its own thing, and you've got EU, there's a broad spectrum around the world of regulatory certainty. But whether it's good regulation or bad regulation, from your point of view, when you have certainty, you can build that into your business plan. It is a line item in your budget that you can understand and plan for, and hopefully there won't be any surprises that come out of left field. So, again, SRSID, those are the 5 components: structural, regulatory, staffing, intellectual property, and data, in terms of a healthy eating regulatory plan for your business. So with that, I will turn it over back to Saj. I think we're going to get into some exciting U.S. stuff, aren't we?
Exactly. So tell us what to expect, what's happening in the U.S., look into your crystal ball for us.
This is a 12-hour panel, right? Okay. So I have a great example of how difficult it is to navigate this world, especially related to regulation. Your question to Dow or not to Dow, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm an academic. But the controlling case right now in California has declared that Dow members are general partners, meaning that their personal assets will be used to pay the debts of the partnership, in this case, the Dow. It's the Sarkoony case. Most folks don't know about this case. I actually was talking to a nonprofit in Oakland that said, we are going to create a Dow. It's perfect, right? And I said, ooh, you need to talk to a lawyer, right? So this is one judge, one case, but it's controlling now in California. And if you didn't know about that and you did create a Dow, that would be really problematic. You do not need me to tell you that the US Congress is dysfunctional. It is very difficult as an academic to research in this space because I keep learning about and writing about the bills that are presented, and then they go nowhere. And this year's version of that is the FIT 21 bill. It is the first crypto-related legislation to pass a House of Congress, which folks are really patting themselves on the back for in the US. But in an election year with no complementary bill in the US Senate, it is not, I can predict, I will look into my the crystal ball and say, we're not going to have federal comprehensive crypto legislation before 2025, if that. That's kind of you're already aware of this. Let me talk about why. Obviously, there are lots of reasons that related to partisanship and that sort of thing. I think we, in the US, underestimate the impact Sam Bankman-Fried had on politicians who are now very wary of the space in general. And that is why I think builders and devs and industry folks really need to be highlighting the socially beneficial use cases of this technology, which is the point of our center, right, is to take cases like the humanitarian use cases we heard about yesterday, the exciting stuff that Algorand is doing now in the context of disaster relief. The problem is that lawmakers won't hear about that unless we make an effort to tell them. Otherwise, they will just go with what they've heard in major headlines and in the news. So to the extent that the Web3 industry is able to create a different narrative, or I would argue, just enhance what's already there in terms of social good use cases, that will help to create balanced legislation.
Excellent. Well, it's good to hear that the U.S. regulatory outlook is as clear as mud. All right, well, is it any better in the rest of the world?
Well, after Michelle brought us all down, I'll try and lift us back up a little bit, which is to talk a little bit about the situation in Europe. You'll probably be aware that MiCA has been talked about. That's the marketing crypto assets legislation, which is pan-European, has been talked about for a number of years now. And look, I think all 4 of us as lawyers here, most lawyers, what we like to do if we're looking after our clients, our companies well, is to give them certainty. it's deeply frustrating for all of us that we don't have that certainty in the US. We have a better degree of certainty in Europe now with MiCA. It will put a framework around the crypto asset industry that people can plan against, and that is very helpful. I wouldn't be panicking right now if you are in the crypto business, because we are at a stage where in the European sphere, we're at the sort of level 1 stage. I think actually on the 30th of June, the first round of MiCA comes into force for stable coins. By the end of the year, the rest will, but it then has to filter down into the individual member countries. And unfortunately, that's where I have to join Michelle and say, I'm afraid I can't give you that much certainty at this stage, because past experience tells me as a securities lawyer, when you hit the individual markets, they all take a very different interpretation. The benefit should be that once you're MiCA compliant, and again, I'm happy to meet with people after this to get into the detail. We don't have the time here. Once you're MiCA compliant, you in theory should be able to passport, the terminology, your product, your services, whatever you're doing around the whole of Europe. But the reality is each European jurisdiction still takes a very different approach, and particularly with crypto. And so I think we're still a long way away from full certainty, but at least I think at this stage we're in a place where you can start within the type of business you've got, the type of product you're looking to offer, the type of service you're looking to offer. You can start to plan around that, which is a good thing.
Excellent. Stay on the regulation theme. Sometimes to me it seems that this regulatory uncertainty coming out of the US is somewhat by design, given that there's currently a dominance of the US dollar. Breathing life into an industry that can provide potentially an alternative financial system may erode that dominance. And if it is looking like for the blockchain industry to be able to grow, it'll effectively have to follow the same KYC, AML regulation that is currently applied to sort of traditional financial institutions. Would blockchain continue to have a USP? Would it continue to hold a place in our current sort of financial system? And if so, or if not, how would that look?
That's a great question. So one of the things I like to tell American audiences or government officials is part of why I think there's hostility in the US among some regulators and lawmakers is because we have a strong dollar. We don't need cryptocurrency. I get a lot of, well, what's the point, right? I trust our central bank. I don't feel like I need this. What's not recognized is that that is not true around the world. And so it is a very American-centric perspective that will not surprise anyone here in Europe that American regulators and lawmakers have. I think what's been really interesting, though, is to see the way the states individually have tried to step into the void. So you're correct that we have, what's called a regulation by enforcement perspective with the SEC. Gary Gensler would disagree with me on that, and I'm happy to debate him. I was a high school debater. I will debate him at any moment. But I do think that the state experimentation has been very intriguing in this space. So, Wyoming just ran way ahead and created LLC wrappers for DAOs. They created a bank. They really are attracting a lot of business in Cheyenne and other places because they're trying to give that certainty. New York took the other direction, which was let's create a BIT license. Let's make it very burdensome to get the BIT license. And only, less than 25 companies were able to get it in the first 5 years. California has waited, and I have some insight into this as someone who worked with the working group. There was a real sense that California is a huge ship. We can't get it wrong because to turn this ship around in a different direction would be really difficult to do. I think that's a similar feeling among the feds, that the US can't afford to get it wrong. The problem is, as we do nothing, we're getting it wrong every day. In California, we're going to have a bit license. The regulations are currently being written by our Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. I know the people who are writing them. They are very thoughtful people around it. They do not want to have what New York has. I think we're trying to hit like a middle approach in California. The feds will have to choose which of these approaches they would like to see, and we don't have time probably to talk about the details of the current bill, but it's more of like a navigating the turf war between the SEC and the CFTC on the federal level, and less of the kind of more creative approaches to regulation that the states are doing.
And yeah, following up on that, Graham, do you think that the rest of the world is trying to fill that void now with trying to be, you see a lot of activity now in the Middle East. I see a lot of founders being interested in setting up shop in places like Dubai with the VARA regulation. You, in your business, as you said, you're regulated across the piece. How do you see that playing out?
That's a very interesting question. I think, for us, so for CoinShares, we're headquartered in Jersey. We're regulated in the US, in France, in Sweden, in the UK. Because of everything that's happening in the space and because of how fluid it is, I think for any founder, for any business you're looking to set up, unfortunately you can't just say, I'm going to plant my flag in this jurisdiction and therefore I will be fine. You need to be as fluid and mobile as you can. In the 5 years that I've been in the space, you had much less choice, and really Dubai, UAE, Abu Dhabi actually particularly, they weren't on the radar at all. And there's now been a flood, I would say not CoinShares yet, but there has been a flood of activity there because you have a very permissive regulatory regime, you have a lot of infrastructure, you have dedicated resources there. That's attractive. But I would just urge a bit of caution, which is that before you move yourself lock, stock, to the lovely sunshine in Dubai, these things can change in a second. And I think having a bit of diversity, being nimble, being able to move to different jurisdictions is a good thing. And then the other point I would make to Michelle's point, in the US, politically right now, crypto is about as front and center as it could be, or as I've seen anywhere in the world. Donald Trump is talking about NFT tokens. It's on the debate. It's up front in front of Congress, which is great. Conversely, if you look at where I'm based in London right now, we've also got an election that's going to happen even before yours. I think the outcome is a little bit more certain. But before coming here, I was looking at the manifestos of the three main parties. No mention of digital assets, no mention of crypto at all. The Conservatives have traditionally been seen as a bit more supportive, maybe, but 14 years of government and my time, certainly in the crypto space, it doesn't trickle through to the regulator, that is for sure. And the other parties and Labour who are most likely going to get in just aren't talking about it. So I think there's an onus on all of us in the space to organize, coordinate, back the people that are lobbying and try and raise the profile and raise it as Michelle said, for the common good. Talk about the good things, the altruistic things. Obviously Algorand is a big part of that crypto can do. Get away from the black swan events, the dirty words like FTX, and refocus people to the things that matter. And I think that's, for all of us in the space, we've got to be the advocates for that.
Excellent.
And just to echo that, I always tell this story about the first time I went to the Houses of Parliament after leaving my previous job with Mr. Blair, and I was at an event for the industry, and one of the people who I knew from my previous job came up to me, a member of Parliament, person making the laws, and he was like, why have you moved into this space? They can't even spell build or hold the right way. And I laughed, and I was like, but then I was like, oh no, hang on. We have a real PR problem, right? If that is the perception of the individual who is making the laws. So to even engage in a very basic education where I do think, obviously the Web3 philosophy of the world is built on inclusivity. However, by using acronyms and inside jokes, and being really focused on a topic that a lot of people are intimidated by tech just in and of itself. Like that puts the onus on us even more to reach out to make sure that people can relate to what we're talking about, to kind of, clear those waters so they understand and can see how it's beneficial in their day-to-day lives. Because for us, it might be really cool to geek out about some of this stuff, but for them, they just want it to work. And they don't want to feel like they're excluded from a community because they don't understand how blocks are produced or an inside joke about holding, right? And I feel like all of us as an industry, when we do explain things to people in a way that they can relate to, it is for the common good, because there's so much good that can be done. I mean, the use cases for blockchain are only limited by our imaginations, really. And especially with the intersection of AI, the new power couple of blockchain and AI, again, possibilities keep going.
Excellent. And I have had similar experience in those contexts, and I think as part of our legal functions, we are more and more called upon to be sort of policy advocates, educating regulators, being in the room, discussing it, so the perception of crypto moves away from, something only of interest to money launderers and criminals, and sort of shaking off some of that stigma. And I know you've done great work in that space by speaking, and sort of it's as I mentioned, people drawing upon their other experiences to be in these conversations, and as Michelle said, to be there as these laws are being written, so that a perspective that's been informed by the industry is also being presented to people who, as you say, may be intimidated by the tech or the acronyms or the GMs and the crypto punks and all that ethos, which of course we all love, but it may be completely alien to a regulator that may be used to dealing with sort of TradFi institutions. I won't call them legacy finance institutions quite yet, but yeah, I think as we're sort of winding down for time, I was going to go through and ask, what do you find the most interesting sort of legal issues, whether you come across or you see in the broader ecosystem? Because for me personally, again, such a breadth of legal issues that come across my desk in this role, compared to any other roles I've had in private practice or in-house. It's just fascinating, and it really makes me excited to be a lawyer in this space. So I'd like to ask you guys, what makes you excited to be a lawyer in this space? Should we go with you?
I'll go first. I think, it would normally be the case, I think, again, with four lawyers up on a stage in most industry sectors, and I've worked in plenty of the traditional finance ones, from insurance to regular securities law, that what we do and what we advise on would be somewhat backroom important, but very boring. Certainly wouldn't be able to keep bums on seats in a place like this. But I think actually where we are is so cutting edge, and to bring it back to, I'm sure Michelle will have more to say on this, but really at the moment, for me, having been in the space for 5 years, keeping an eye on the developments or lack of developments in the US, no matter where you are in the world, the reality is right now, the reach of the American legal system, the potential consequences, the potential opportunities will always eclipse everything else. And how those develop over the coming weeks, months, I mean, every day it's something new, which is something that I've not had as a lawyer before. Usually, things are written into law. Yes, you learn them, you advise them, you navigate around them. But now, the tectonic plates are always moving. And looking at the developments in the US, and the way that they're done through enforcement, which for us as lawyers is massively frustrating, is something that is a never-ending sense of entertainment, but also stress as well, when we're trying to advise people like yourselves on what to do. But yeah, it's a great space.
So, as I said, I have been teaching. Oh, is this okay? I've been teaching for a long time, and the corporate law class that I teach securities laws from 1933 and 1934. And so it was really exciting at first to teach something where I felt like I had an arm in being able to help draft laws that would be beneficial. I was once asked, how will you know that mass adoption has occurred? And my answer was, when people stop asking how my Bitcoin law class is going and start asking how my blockchain law class is going, right? So I'm the only person teaching blockchain law in the city of San Francisco. And I know why, because every single semester I have to redo my syllabus. It is one of the only classes I've ever taught where I leave 2 classes at the end of the semester because I know something will happen between January and April, or between August and October, that will be extremely important, extremely cutting edge, and I have no idea what it is. And for me, that's a really fun thing. It's not for everybody, obviously, but I think we're all attracted to this space because it is so fast-moving and exciting. I'm sitting here waiting for the Supreme Court to issue a case that I think is going to have consequences for emerging technology. Every morning I check, and every morning they're not issuing the case. But we don't know how this will affect technology. And to me, that's part of what makes this so fun, is being able to not just shape the laws, but also be on the cutting edge of what the laws should be.
I mean, I agree with everything that y'all said. I think, from my personal perspective, sitting within Polkadot and looking at what's happening around the world, from a legal perspective, not to, I don't want to repeat what y'all said, but really it is being on that frontier of law and regulation and helping shape what's happening. I think also what I find exciting is the exposure I do get to founders and to builders. And I always use this analogy. I feel like the builders of the world are artists. Your medium is code. It's not clay or bronze or oil on canvas, but you're creating something amazing that will change the world, is changing the world, and building something new. And whether it's a single person shop up to, a much more developed organization, being able to be in the room with people who are building the future, especially for my children. I'm a mom. I have a 13-year-old and 8-year-old, and living in London, they spent 2 years of their lives on lockdown, right? They are very comfortable with a digital identity, with skins, with Roblox. I mean, Roblox was how they talked to their friends for 2 years. So whatever else is happening, and not to be generational here, I am Gen X, but let's say the boomers and Gen X in terms of regulatory approach, you get to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, all of this, it's just almost a foregone conclusion. So to be helping build that future and making sure that we're trying to get good regulation in place to enable that, which will be better, I think, again, for the world, is a huge honor and privilege. So happy to be a part of it all.
Excellent. And I think with that, we'll conclude. And just to say that, come grab us. We lawyers aren't as scary as we look. I mean, of course, Chrissy and I are dressed fabulously, but our other 2 panelists also didn't get the memo on the dress, because one was at a Taylor Swift concert and the other one was coming in for the F1. So we lawyers, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So make friends with crypto lawyers. Ask us your questions. We're on your side to guide you through the choppy waters of this storm, with an industry that's growing at a breakneck pace, and it looks like we're all loving being part of it. So thank you very much.